If you're wondering what on earth this video is, so am I. So every now and again, an author will face the problem of they really want to talk about their books, but they have no one to talk about it with, and the only person who will listen is a brick wall. And I have faced this problem, I won't lie. And that's exactly why I made a YouTube channel, and I, for some odd reason, I only remembered this reason 5 days ago, and I posted about it on TikTok, and people now want to listen about my books. So here I am. This is a very unstructured rant. If you have watched any of my unstructured videos before, you'll know that this is going to get very chaotic very quickly. But here we are, going to talk about the NIGHTSHADE duology, since book 2 is coming out in exactly a month today, as of filming this at least. I'm not scared at all, you are. So if you don't know anything about the NIGHTSHADE duology, which I don't expect you to, it is basically a book series that I have been writing half my life now, and I do mean that literally. I started writing book 1 when I was 11. I turn 20 next month. It's been wild. However, the first book, The House of Hidden Miracles, as of right now, is my most popular book to date. And thank God, because I did spend 7 years writing it, so I'm glad you guys like it. And it was originally meant to be a standalone, actually. Like, I wrote The House of Hidden Miracles, and I was like, I'm not writing a sequel, this is not going to become a series, I've already got a series, and then I wrote a sequel. But no, The Land of Lost Souls, which is the sequel, which is coming out next month, that will be the last book, I swear. You might get a short story every now and again, bonus chapter. There is not going to be another book. This clip is going to be used in a video at some point, probably when I announce a third book, but that's not going to happen. Okay, I'm a woman of my word. If you don't know what either of the books are about, it's basically like a boarding school mystery meets a like witchy fantasy book. The best way I can compare it is like it's Wild Child meets Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. I don't know if that makes sense to people, but I'm hoping it does. You see the vibe, you see the vision. It basically follows a bunch of boarding school students at an academy for genius kids as they have to try and solve the disappearance of a Victorian family that used to live in a manor house that later became the school. And, well, that's at least what happens in book 1. Book 2 is finding some closure in something that happens in book 1, and that something got uncovered during solving the disappearance, which is all I'm going to say. But as you can imagine, with that type of story, we have some jumping between time periods. So we have Ivy O'Connor, who is one of the students at Blanchard Academy, which is set in present day, or possibly a different time period. I'll get to that later in this video. And then we have diary entries from Isabella Holloway, who is one of the family members who used to live in the house in 1886. And then in book 2, we have a new time period in 1612 following someone called Sarah Sharp. The process of how this book came to be what it is very strange. As you can imagine, very long. It's had many iterations, and I have embarrassingly not really got an answer of the question, why did you write this book? Because while I know why, it's one that doesn't make sense, right? Okay, so we're talking like about 9 years ago. 11, 12 years old, we're talking 2017. I had a series of dreams. Don't know why, can't tell you much about them now, but I know that A, they took place in a massive manor house, B, some point involved walking through a mirror, which is strange because the Alice Through the Looking Glass movie hadn't come out yet, so I don't know where I got that from because I have not read the book. Among other things, but also I was a massive fan of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, Peter Pan, that type of story, if that makes sense to people, the Nutcracker. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna write a fun little story about a girl in the Victorian era, gets abandoned, gets taken in by this magical family. I say actually in the Victorian era, it wasn't originally, it was in like 1910 or something like that, because Evie, who's one of the siblings of the Blanchard family, was a suffragette. 14-year-old suffragette, which later got changed to 1886. I'm not too sure why I changed it. I think it's because I know more about the Victorian era than I did the 1910s, like, because obviously it's not going to be in World War One. So I think that was why I made the change. But yeah, I wrote about 3 chapters that to this day are still published on Wattpad. Seek it out if you have to. I don't recommend doing it though. It's a 12-year-old writing on Wattpad. That's all I'm going to say. That being said though, this was not fanfiction. I know that Wattpad has the association. This was just me not knowing where to post stories at the time. Yeah, so I wrote about 3 chapters. I was like, great, I'm gonna write this one day, but I've got a lot going on in my life right now. I'm switching schools, I have my GCSEs, stuff like that. Completely forgot about it. Until about, I want to say 2020, 2021. I wanted to write a boarding school novel. Chronicles of the Isle had already been in the process, like pretty much fully written at this point, but I didn't want to jump into book 2. So I was like, I want to write a boarding school novel, kind of the vibe of the Marauders, kind of the vibe of Wild Child. You get what I mean? I was like, I want them to be solving a mystery, but I don't want like your classic like, oh, something's been robbed, or oh, someone's been murdered. I was like, wait a minute. Let me just combine the 2. I think this was also somewhat inspired by a trip to Alton Towers. I cannot explain the thought process behind that one. I just remember coming up with the concept of a manor house getting turned into a boarding school during a trip to Alton Towers, because if you're not aware of what that is, Alton Towers is a theme park in the UK. However, it is on the grounds of this massive manor house, which has kind of been turned into a ride partially. And I don't know, the thought process was going a bit mad that day. So I started kind of combining the 2 of writing a boarding school mystery, but the mystery was this book that I wrote when I was like 13. And somehow it worked. I don't know how that all meshed together. I can't believe I've published writing that I did when I was 12, but here we are. I mean, it's obviously edited. And the first book was published on my 18th birthday, which was very much intentional, by the way. People were like, what luck, it's fallen on your 18th birthday. That must be so stressful for you. I was like, no, it was absolutely on purpose. And because, you know, I'm a writer, I like poetic date meanings and stuff like that. So all coming for full circle of, oh, I've been writing this book for pretty much all of my childhood. I'm going to release it the day I turn 18. And then book 2 happened pretty much completely on accident. Like I said earlier in this video, book 2 wasn't, like, this was meant to be a standalone. However, I think probably because I had spent so long working on this book, I was like, I have way too much more to say to just put into like a mini side story or anything like that. And someone was just like, as long as you have the content and you're not forcing the content, you might as well write the book. And I was like, fair enough. And so book 2 is following the kind of the lore behind the Ravens Point Witches, which within the context of book 1 is kind of just a local legend in the nearby town of where the school is. Completely made that one up on the spot. This was not meant to, this book was not meant to be about witches at all. But come writing book 2, I was like, oh no, actually there's a lot that could be done here. And so it turned into a like story about witches meets the mystery. I'm hoping this all makes sense to people. The only thing is because obviously I'm releasing this video a month before book 2 comes out, I can't actually talk about a lot of book 2 yet. I might do like a spoiler included video after it comes out so I can rant about it a bit more. But if that does sound appealing to you, by the way, small plug, don't have to buy it at all, but it will be available on my Ko-Fi and on Amazon on August 15th, 2025. I'll put all the links in the description and also on screen. Small plug. There was also a massive thing of, obviously, the present day storyline did not exist for about the first 4 years of this book being in the works. The main storyline kind of came to be a thing in 2021. So making the core group, there was a lot of debates because yes, it was inspired by the Marauders, but I did not want, 4 guys running around being pranksters around a boarding school because A, that's been done before, clearly, and B, quite derivative. So I was like, I don't want to make the group that big. The group ends up being like 9 people by the end of book 2, I swear. It depends who you count, if you count partners. So it's kind of a mix of people who were inspired by my own life and characters in books I like. There's a bit of a mix. But it was a strange thing between Noah and Ivy. So Ivy is the main character. Noah is her rival who transfers into the school at the beginning of book 1. And there's a whole thing of like 4 of the main group have like a history where Ivy, her roommate Amy, and her twin brother Will all went to the same primary school before going to the academy, and then Noah didn't go to the primary school, but he went to a nearby one, and they often competed in like inter-school competitions and stuff like that, so they are sworn enemies. But there's like a weird knowledge about it in the fact that like because Noah and Ivy are strictly book smart speaking, a little bit more intelligent than the rest of the group, they have a quite unique experience that not many people can really relate to, and so they end up finding that they can only really relate to each other in certain aspects, which I'm not saying that I am any genius, but that was somewhat inspired by some of my own experiences. I will explain why. Now, I would like to say I've never really done bad in school. Again, I'm not saying any genius people have definitely done better, but I've never really done bad. One thing about me, however, is I have a stupidly good memory about my childhood, and it's quite strange. Like, for example, 2 days ago, I was talking with my dad, and we were talking about different trips that we've been on in my lifetime, and he was like, oh, you probably won't remember this, you were 2 years old, but we went to this trip to this campsite in Cornwall called Music Water. And I was like, oh no, I remember that trip well. He was like, yeah, there was a boy you played with, yeah, Milo. And I got his email, and then we never emailed each other. I also made friends with these 3 girls that were the daughters of the owner, and they had an arcade, and I bought a pamper, like a spa kit, and we all did that together with like face masks, and the place had a pool. We went May of 2009, don't know why I said it like that. And he was like, how on earth can you remember that much? And I'm like, I don't even know. I don't have an eidetic memory. I do not remember everything, but I definitely remember more than most people in my life. So it can be a bit isolating at times where like there's people in my life that don't remember the same things I do, so it's a thing of like I've got to pretend that I don't remember as much to not seem weird, if that makes sense. Like, for example, my mum has a few close friends who have kids my age, but because they are my mum's friends and some of them live quite far away, one of my mum's friends lives like 4 hours away, another one lives like 2. We only see each other as like family friends, like maybe once a year, sometimes once every couple of years. However, there have been situations where like I will be not stuck. It's not like I don't enjoy their company, but I will be put with my mum's friends' kids. They won't remember me, but I will remember a load about them. So I've got to pretend like I don't. I'm hoping that I put this in a way that doesn't sound like really self-centered and arrogant. It's not obviously that big of a deal. It doesn't keep me awake at night, but there have been times where like I do feel a bit isolated because my mind clearly works differently in a way of people around me, and it definitely probably is because I'm autistic. I am aware. You don't need to diagnose me in the comments. I already had my GP do that. But yeah, I have never been a fan of enemies to lovers, really. I do not understand enemies to lovers, but rivals to lovers kind of makes more sense to me, and actually writing Noah and Ivy's dynamic was really cool, and probably one of the best, I'm most proud of writing those 2 characters. And then a lot of like the locations and surroundings were just kind of inspired by places in Wales, because if I haven't made it clear on this channel, I'm Welsh, come from Wales, love it, most of the time. But there's a lot of places around me that kind of have that vibe of like a small old British village, and then big manor houses. Like Blanchard Academy was partly inspired by Alton Towers, like I said earlier, which is not in Wales, it's in, I want to say, Staffordshire? It's been a minute since I've been. But also Irvig, which is a place semi near where I live. I don't want to dox myself in this video. But I used to go there a lot as a kid. We used to go every Halloween, and so I remember so specifically when writing this book being like, could you take me to Irvig? I know I haven't been since I was like a small child, but I want to go. I'm gonna put videos and pictures on the screen so you see what I mean. Like, I often talk about how Blanchard Academy has like gardens with a big lake and there's a forest surrounding it, and if you can clearly tell where I got that from. Anyway, that is a very unstructured, disorganized rant about my books that I did not plan this at all. I was like, I'm just gonna talk into the camera about it. If people listen, great. If you've gotten this far, thank you so much. If you're interested in the Nightshade duology, The House of Hidden Miracles is available on Amazon, but it's also available on my Ko-Fi for significantly cheaper, but you didn't hear that from me. I am also currently selling physical signed copies, UK only though, through there, because shipping's a bit of a nightmare at the moment. And then if you're interested in The Land of Lost Souls, it will be releasing on August 15th, next month, on the platforms I've just listed, possibly more. Watch this space. Thank you so much for watching though.